Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai, Bashem Kakodash, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. Shalom to the brothers in the highways and byways, pushing this word now in sincerity and truth. The sisters, the believers, the helps, the hopeful elect. Shalom. This is the brother Aaron from a James Jamaica camp, coming with another quick lesson. And this lesson, not sure what I'm gonna name it as yet, but it's surrounding conflicts and the warfare that we've been enlisted as soldiers to fight, and being soldiers of Yahushai, main part of or the main one of the main functions of a soldier is to handle and deal with conflicts, right? And as I go through this lesson, I'm gonna pull a few historical references, and hopefully this is edifying. Also, just for brothers that may not have realized, but in the New Testament, there are a lot of references to when it comes on to ancient Greek and sometimes ancient Roman history with some of the terminologies. And also, in specific cases, when there's reference to the Old Testament, there's also that, So let me just get straight into it. This is 2 Timothy 2, verse 1. It says, "Thou therefore, my son, be strong in the grace that is in Hamashiach Yahushai." All right. It says, "And the things that thou hast learned, Salakia, and the things that thou hast heard of me among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men who shall be able to teach others also." All right. So Paul told Timothy, to be strong in the grace, and also, the things that he has heard, among many witnesses, the same you should commit to faithful men. So we learn this ministry through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shemar Shai. Us here at GMS, our teachers have been the apostles and elders on down, right? And so we learn the breakdowns, so we learn the scriptures, and the Lord bless each man according to the measure of the spirit that he sees fit. Our job is to also teach that which we have learned. So that is a part of the spiritual warfare. That is the duty. But once again, it's a spiritual warfare. Therefore, there are conflicts and there are challenges which requires which comes with hardness, which comes with afflictions, that comes with a lot of conflicts. All right. Moving on to verse 3, it says, "Thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Yahushai HaMashiach." All right. So let's work with this first reference. So let's look on endure hardness. Right, the Greek is right there. First definition says to suffer, endure evils, hardships, troubles. All right. When you go down, where it says Strong's definition, it says to be afflicted, endure afflictions, suffer trouble. All right. Is it here? Right. And if you look down the section that's below John 4 and 10, it says used frequently of the hardships of military service. Right? It says what? Used frequently of the hardships of military service. Now, you know, hardships is there. So let me go to this right here, right? As I said, there's a lot of Roman references within the New Testament. So I looked up hardship of military service in ancient Rome, right? It says military service in ancient Rome. In ancient times, Slovakia was military service in ancient times was a hardship due to the brutal training, and we're being trained to be kings, priests, and judges, you know, and being firm and strong spiritually, mentally, and also physically. Let's say what bodily exercise profited little. So there's an aspect to that, but flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. So therefore, we all know that we are going to be changed, right? It says the constant threat of death or severe injury in battle. The brothers always say, we going out on the highways and edges, and us pushing, the doctrine of Yahweh Shem Yahushai behind enemy lines, you know, there's therefore the threat of death or severe injury, especially in the times to come where the persecution is gonna be upon us high, right? It says poor medical care, the long and often mandatory duration of service, right? So you know that you're gonna be far away from family, friends, a lot of comforts of civilian life will not be there, right? It says the physical and mental strain of camp life. Yeah, we normal in GMS, most camps usually do camps on a Saturday or sometime on a weekend. And if you know this world, the weekend is the time to have fun. The weekend is the time to live it up. So family may want to do things on the weekend. Your woman may want you to do something on the weekend. Children may, they're saying, what about the kids and all of that. But guess what? The time has been dedicated to camp. And brothers can think about other examples as well, right? So I'll read that again. It says the physical and mental strain of camp life. It says and the necessity of relying on self-sufficiency for basic needs like food and water. Like what the scripture says, same Timothy, with food and raiment, let us be there with content. You're not always being out there. It's not an easy life, right? Especially in early armies, soldiers faced severe conditions from both direct combat and the harsh conditions of campaigns. So, the battle is there to deal with, but also the elements. They a few years back they called the brothers, in areas that snow, they call them what? Snow bunnies. Because, whether it's raining, we're out there. Whether it's hot out, we're out there. Whether the snow is out, we're out there. People are like, hey, it's raining. Why are you going out? People sometimes pass us out on the camp and we have our umbrellas and we're still pushing the word and they're looking at us like, why the hell are they still out here in the rain? Well, guess what? Those are the harsh conditions, right? It says which include limited logistics and inherent dangers. Yeah, we're out there, right? It says physical and mental toll, brutal training. Soldiers underwent grueling training regimens, including target practice with wooden and weapons, physically demanding and dangerous. Right? We'll talk about it says warfare itself was inherently risky, with soldiers facing severe physical injuries and the constant possibility of death in combat, inadequate medical care, mental strain. It says Roman society was aware of the mental toll military service took on soldiers, indicating the inherent psychological burden of prolonged military life. And that's why even within the ministry, you know, after a time you see some men say, look, they can't do it anymore. They it's too rough. They feel like they're losing too much, they're losing everything, and they just want a break. They want an ease. It's too much. I remember a few years back, I think it was a brother from one of the Dallas camps left and saying that from he left the truth, everything started to work out better for him. He started to get jobs, and he was no longer bitter, and the whole 9 yards, because it takes a certain mindset to continue pushing through the industry. And yeah, there are ups and there are downs, and sometimes you're by yourself, sometimes you're within a camp. Even the apostles say that, look, even if it's a case where you get kicked out of GMS, the truth doesn't stop. But you still have to go out there and fight. You still have to go out there and do your duties, because not because you're in GMS doesn't mean that you're a part of the elect, right? But even if that's the case, you may be out there by yourself and still have to do your duty until Yahweh Shem Yahushai, right? It says mandatory and long-term service in many Asian societies, including Athens. Military service was a long-term obligation, sometimes lasting for decades. How long have the apostles and elders been out? Right? They've been out there for decades. Right? It says basic living conditions. Soldiers had to contend with the basic, often arduous conditions of military camps and marches, requiring significant self-reliance. And sometimes within this truth, it comes with that. And hey, the lessons and the minute and the trials within the ministry, one, it is improving and making our spirit stronger, because guess what, in the days to come, our spirits have to be ready. But not only that, we're being built up again as men. It's the Lord strengthening us, right? And guess what, this is a lifelong thing. We're being battle hardened, right? We're being battle hardened, we're being battle tested. And the more battles we fight and the more battles we overcome and the more we endure with the right spirit and keep on fighting, the stronger we get until Yahweh shall return. That is why Yahweh shall say, what? He that endureth unto the end, the same shall be saved. So even right now, as it speaks, us being in this ministry, us being blessed with the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the scriptures, it's a lifelong thing. Like, it's a lifelong journey until Yahweh Shai returns, and we are changed, right? So the trials won't stop, the conflicts won't stop, the battles won't stop until Yahweh Shai returns. That's when the war will end. That's when the battle will be won, right? So going back to the BLB, what was that? Hardness, endure hardness as a good soldier. Alright, so let's look on the word soldier. It says a common soldier, metaphor, a champion of the cause of the Messiah. Right? It's also says a common warrior. And let's look on the word champion. Right? As a matter of fact, I wanted to check hardships because that was one of the words earlier. Right? Hardships, something that cause or entails suffering or privation. So on the word privation, an act or instance of depriving, a state of being deprived, the lack of what is needed for existence. And we are in a very deprived situation, right? When it comes down to everything, the food is tainted, the air is tainted, the or people, the unbelievers are tainted, the whole world is tainted. So in every aspect, we're starving. But guess what? We have the basics. We have what is necessary for our spirit, which is what the scriptures, the spiritual food, and then by extension, the Lord, gives us our daily bread, right? But going back to champion, it says a winner of first prize or first place in a competition, right? We're going to get to that as well because that's a part of it. I'm going to look at the second definition. It says a militant advocate or defender. Now let's look at militant. Engaged in warfare or combat. Aggressively active, as in a cause. So we have to be working within this ministry. We have to be active, right? It says what? Combative, marked by eagerness to fight or contend, right? The word contend is going to come back up again, right? So it says Slovakia, also warfare or military operations between enemy, conflicts. That's something that we also saw earlier, right? It says mental struggle resulting from incomprehensible or opposing needs, drives, wishes, or external or internal demands. So that's the internal conflict, the internal fight. But also it goes to competitive or opposing action of incompat incompat on the word advocate, one who defends or maintain a cause or proposal. So where Yahweh is militant advocate. We're militant advocates for Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, one who supports or promotes the interests of a cause or group, which is what we do when we're teaching, right? One who pleads the cause of another, right? And Yahushua is pleading our cause before the Most High, but also we're out here pleading the cause of Yahushua, right? Um, what's the other one? Right, it says a militant advocate or defender. Aren't we supposed to? Aren't we set as a defense of the gospel? Right, one that defends, to drive danger or attack away from. Right, we defend the gospel, maintain or support the face of argument. So like to maintain our support in the face of argument or hostile criticism, right? Anything else there? Right. says to take action against attack or challenge. This is all the things that we're doing in the spirit, and in some instances physically as well, right? Because what? This is war, right? This is war, right? So reading this again, it says, therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Yahweh Shai HaMashiach, right? It says, no man that warreth entangleth himself with the affairs of this life, that he may please him who had chosen him to be a soldier, right? So let's look on the word warreth. To make a military expedition. So if you're on this military campaign, you can't be considered about civilian civilian matters or civilian affairs, right? To lead soldiers to war or to battle, to do military duty, to be on active service, be a soldier. We're in active service, you know, just like the apostles and various brothers always give reference to the movie Dead Presidents, with that scene where the soldier was saying that, look, he can't think about the family and the wife and the kid at home. He has to stay grounded on the battlefield so that he involved in, to be entangled into, to inweave. Is there anything here? I always like to check this. Entangle, involved in. Alright, that's it for that. And it says with the affairs, right? Business, occupation, it says occupations pertaining to civil life opposed to warfare, right? And it says 2 Timothy 2 verse 4, it says, in the same and other sense in Greek. So it shows, right? The pursuits and occupations pertaining to civil life opposed to warfare, right? We should be thinking about what? Warfare, not civil life. Focus on this truth. We're in active service, right? When you're in the military and you're at base or you're at camp, your entire time is dedicated to either training or focusing on the battle and the war ahead, until you head out and you travel and go through those conditions and till you fight, and then when the fight is done, then you come back home, right? This is our life on this side. This is what we signed up for, right? It says that we be able to, that we may please. So let's look on the word please right here. Second definition says strive to please, and A, to accommodate oneself to the opinions, desires, and interests of others. And guess what? We are trying to be in line with the opinion, desires, and interest of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, which is what? Us learning these scriptures, teaching these scriptures, as Timothy, as Paul said to Timothy in the beginning of the chapter, and applying them to the best of our ability, right? It says that we may please him that had chosen us to be a soldier. And when you look up chosen to be a soldier, it says to gather, collect an army, to enlist soldiers of a commander. Yahushua is our commander, right? So let me look here, and thinking back, I think there's something that I may have missed. Did I miss it? Slovakia. Let me just check this real quickly. Therefore, I did look up this word, but I think there was something in the definition that I had missed. Um, no. Alright, so continuing on, verse 5 it says, and if a man also strive for masteries, yet he is not crowned, except he strive lawfully. Right? And when you look on the word strive, right, it says to engage in a contest, contend in public games, contend for a prize, which is what? Salvation, right? But also it says that it says to endure to suffer, and um when it says that Yahushua had chosen us, the word soldier went back to champion. It says we endure hardness as a good soldier. The word soldier went back to champion. In ancient Rome, the gladiators were chosen as champions to fight on behalf of a house or for a particular emperor or sponsor or school, like gladiator school, in honor for that school, right? As it says, what to engage in a contest, contend in public games, contend for a prize, right? So that's referring to what? Striving. Now I have it on my computer screen right now. I just didn't want to have to pull up a million tabs on my phone. Um, and I'm reading this from Google, the AI overview. I typed in, did contenders in ancient Rome arenas have to win by the rules to be crowned victors? And the AI overview said, yes, contenders in ancient Roman arenas did have to win by established rules to be crowned victors, as fights were highly regimented, overseen by a referee, and conducted with specific categories, weapons, and armor designed to make the contest exciting and fair, with a victor earning a palm branch and an award. If you watch movies like Gladiator, you will see the palm branch around their head. That was and sometimes it would be golden. Sometimes that's the crown that they got, right? It says, or even their freedom for overcoming their opponent according to the rules, right? So that's the word strive. It says every man strive for the mastery. He has to strive what the fuck? Strive for the crown. Looking up the word crown here, it says to endure with, to encircle with a crown, to crown the victor of a victor in a contest, right? So that's another example as well. So not only as soldiers, but as champions in the arena fighting for Yahushua, right? And having to fight lawfully, right? And when you look up the word lawfully, it says lawfully, agreeable to the law, properly. Um, it gives that reference. I think I did check on the root right here. And when you go down to C, it says for the root, it says the Christian religion, which they're talking about the truth. It says the law demanding faith and moral instruction given by the Messiah, especially the precept concerning love. Right? So we have that love for our brothers in arms, for our fellow soldiers, right? Um, let me just jump down. Usually here has extra bit. that is it. Um, but yeah, going back to the precept, it says, and if a man also strive for the masteries, yet he is not crowned, except he strive lawfully. And then it says here, it says, the husbandman that laboreth must be first partaker of the fruits. So another example is like a farmer, right? That actually, tend to the vineyard, and then when when he works, he becomes what the first partakers. That's his price, right? So when you look on the word husbandman, it says a husbandman, tiller of the soil, a vine dresser, and there are many parables about being in the vineyard, right? Um, and this is the word that labor it. It says to grow weary, tired, exhausted, to toil or burden or grief, because farming or husbandry is hard work, right? It says to labor with wearisome efforts, to toil of bodily labor, and sometimes it's wearisome efforts, but we know that we're not going to get the results or the fruit until Yahushua returns, right? And if you down here says strong definition, and it goes on and says to feel fatigue, right? um I think there's something down here that I should be seeing. Oh, it says down here, it says of the frustrated labor of the prophets, but there's something else. So okay, let's give me a quick second. Right. It says of the toilsome efforts of teachers in proclaiming and promoting the kingdom of God and the Messiah. That's one of the definitions, right? Bodily labor, right? I think one of the definitions that I was looking up earlier um, went to the fatigue and the conflicts of the apostleship, right? Okay, so that's the word labor must be first partakers, right? So let me read this again. It says the husbandman that labored must be first partaker of the fruits, right? One of these definitions, so like, just bear with me real quickly. It says is it this one? One of the definitions I can led back to the frustration. So okay, let me just see if I can find it. Right. It is here the word for warrant. It says tropically of the conflicts of the apostolic office, right? So there are conflicts and frustrations. Yes, it it says with its arduous duties and functions, right? To contend with carnal inclinations. That's also another thing, fighting against the flesh, right? So there's a lot of fighting, it's a warfare. And also, there was one more thing that I had looked up when it comes on to the crown. Silaki from all over the place. When it comes on to um, striving lawfully for the mastery. Um, where is it? Right here. I did use Claude AI to ask a question regarding striving lawfully, right? So it did give an overall definition. I'm just going to get to the point. It's so I asked because it was explaining the various rules concerning gladiators' fight and how the fights would be decided. So I said, how about the times? One of the times, one of the definitions went into referee oversight. So I asked, how about the ones that adhere to the referee oversight? It says when gladiatorial matches opened and operated Slovakia under strict referee oversight, the rules were generally more binding and had to be followed for legitimate victory. Here is how this worked. It says the referee was typically an experienced former gladiator who understood combat techniques and could spot rule violations. When their authority was respected, they had the power to declare winners, call fouls, and even stop matches. Right? It says establish victory conditions. Unlike referee oversight, under referee oversight, victories had to meet specific criteria. And it's the same thing within the ministry where there are in war there are things that are called what rules of engagement. That's why even in today's society you have they call what are called war crimes or crimes against humanity and all of that. And also it's the same thing even with the gladiatorial fights where you know if you don't fight lawful, if you're not playing by the rules, then if you even if you technically win, you're not awarded the crown. And it's the same thing for within the ministry. Unless we are walking according to the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Shai, we won't get a crown. Right? So it's clean disarmament of the opponent, forcing a legitimate surrender, achieving a decisive advantage, referee deemed conclusive. Right? It says rule enforcement. Right. So I asked what would happen if the rules, if someone won who broke the rules. It says when a gladiator broke the rules but still achieved what would technically be a victory, several consequences could follow depending on the severity of the violation and who was overseeing the match. Immediate referee intervention. A competent referee would typically declare the victory invalid, award the win to the opponent instead, restart the match with some penalties applied. In severe cases, disqualify the rule breaker entirely. It says penalties and punishment. Rule breaking gladiators faced physical punishments. Flogging was common. Loss of privilege or earnings from the match. Reduced status within their gladiatorial school. Being forced to fight at a disadvantage in future matches. In extreme cases, execution for serious violations like attacking after surrender. And you can get the Lord has, different ways in which punishment can apply. Sometimes you even get be punished and still have the mercy to still continue within the ministry, and then other times it can be straight up death, right? Um, it says gladiators known for rule breaking might be matched against particularly dangerous opponents as punishment, lose sponsorship or support of their Lannister, trainer, or owner. So, your Hawashai can pretty much, if you're making a comparison, can lose the spirit of your Hawashai, right? It says face reduced chances of earning their freedom, being relegated to less prestigious matches. And if you're within a camp, there are times when you know you may be a case where you lose rank, or you know you're on probation, or you know some form of disciplinary action actually takes place. It also says school discipline. Gladiatorial schools had their own internal justice system. A fighter who brought dishonor to the school through rule breaking could face severe internal discipline, including reduced rations, harder training, or isolation. That that's similar to even being in a camp, right? Um, so yeah, whether it's within a brutal contests, you know, such as a gladiatorial fight, being a champion for Yahushai, or being a soldier that's on the campaign and being enlisted within the army, to be a combatant, to be a military advocate or defender, to be a warrior and actually, aiming to win the war or to gain the crown, it's warfare. And in order to be good at to function properly, our head has to be in the game 24/7 365, because a lot of gladiators, they would be at the schools for for a long time because they were slaves, and rarely some of them would actually gain their freedom. And even then, having a sponsor or being within that type of sport, it's usually a lifelong pursuit. But guess what? It's warfare, it's combat, therefore it's conflict, and to survive within that type of activity, so to speak, or that type of world, then you have to bear and overcome the harshness, the spiritual, the mental, and the physical harshness that comes with it. And usually, those who are battle tested and endure are usually the ones who end up, being the victors in the end. And that's the spirit that we want to pray to from Yahweh, pray for Yahweh Shem Yahushai to give unto us as it pertains unto the ministry, you know, so that we be, peradventure, will be able to endure unto the end, and receive salvation. So hopefully this was edifying. Once we want to give all praises and honor, glory unto Yahweh Bashem Yahushai Bashem Makakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. Shalom to the brothers in the highways and byways pushing this word in all sincerity and truth. The sisters, the believers, the helps, the hopeful elect. Shalom.